studio with me, I have Nick Michels. He is the Deputy State's Attorney for Minnehaha County. We're going to talk about a case going to the Supreme Court. Actually, I think it's already there, right?
It is.
Just heading there, yeah. So this is a case that has the potential to move the pro-life cause forward in a very big way. So we're hoping there will be some good things from that. But we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk also about a Catholic lawyers group that he has been instrumental in starting in the state. So welcome, Nick.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. You and I met at, well, at least officially, I don't know if we had met before that, but met officially at Taste the Goodness this in August. So we got to chat a little bit then, and you told me about this case going through the Supreme Court, and we were like, oh, we got to talk about this a little bit. So here you are.
I am. Yes.
Lucky you.
Blessed, yes.
Yeah. All right. So before we get into that, will you just tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure, yeah. I was actually born in Washington, but...
Oh, okay. Washington State.
Yeah.
Okay.
But ever since 2001, my family has lived here in South Dakota.
Okay.
I was seminary for the Diocese actually for a while, too. And I got my JD down at Ave Maria School of Law in Florida. But wanted to come back home and practice. Spent some time in Pierre, and now I'm Deputy State's Attorney for Minnehaha County here in Sioux Falls.
Yeah, so you work for the State's Attorney directly, right?
I do, yes, as a prosecutor.
Okay. That's got to be an interesting job.
No, it is.
Interesting?
I could talk forever about it.
I bet you could. Okay, so will you then tell us about the case that's going before the Supreme Court? Because I know there's been a couple. We've just had one from Texas that went through about abortion.
Sure.
And now we're going to have this other one. So what is this case that's going through?
Well, this case is a direct challenge to Roe versus Wade back in 1973. It's called Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization.
This is out of Mississippi, right?
It is. Mississippi passed a law that basically makes no bones about it. They are directly trying to challenge the ruling in Roe versus Wade. And there's a lot of commentary out there that I happen to agree with it. I mean, there's always a chance that the Supreme Court could try and split the baby, so to speak. I hate to use that euphemism here, but not totally overturn Roe v. Wade, but maybe limit it. But the way that this law is written and the way that the issue that they said that they'd take it up, it sounds like it's going to either go totally one way or the other. Oh,
okay. So what does the law say now? Because I'm not super familiar with this one.
Well, the law as it stands is the Supreme Court has basically defined a right to abortion in the United States Constitution. There's nowhere in the text that says anything remotely akin to that. Right. But ever since 1973 and in subsequent cases, the Supreme Court has said that there is a constitutional right. So the states really have no say in whether abortion should be illegal or not.
Right. So this particular case, what kind of effect, if we get a favorable ruling, does it actually do away with Roe v. Wade? What happens if we get that?
Well, that's a good question because even as I'm reading a lot of the commentary out there right now, I think a lot of Americans on both sides of the issue misunderstand what would happen with this court's ruling. It's not as though if they overturn Roe v. Wade, that all of a sudden abortion is illegal in the United States. All the court would be saying is there's no constitutional right to it. And so they leave the question really up to the individual states. In South Dakota, I know we already have a law on the books that goes into effect if Roe v. Wade is overturned that immediately starts to limit the practice of abortion in the state. Now, other states are preparing for that in a different way. You see states like New York have already started to liberalize their abortion laws. So, I mean, the battle isn't really over with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. It just now brings it down to the local level.
So it'll be a state-to-state battle.
It really will,
then,
yes.
Which is better than the federal battle because I think you can actually make real headway. I feel like if it's at a state level.
You can because I mean politics is localized.
Right.
I mean, people, it's. I mean, there's a Catholic principle of subsidiarity that we balance with this principle of solidarity, and subsidiarity is essentially this idea that the best progress is made at a more local level.
Right.
Your average Joe Schmo is going to have a lot more of an influence in what goes on at the state than what goes on at the federal level.
Right. Just like school boards and mayoral councils or city councils are actually quite important
Exactly.
to our lives locally.
It is.
Sometimes more important than what's going on in the federal government.
Exactly,
So
yes.
we need to have our effect there. If there's an unfavorable ruling, then really nothing changes. Is that right?
No, and it's. I mean,
Or does it set us back?
In some ways, I would say it would. Some might disagree with me, but we've never been in a better position right now to overturn it than we are right now.
Okay.
We have a majority of the justices on the court are what we would call originalists
Right.
or textualists, those who believe that the law as it's written is what should be enforced and not what their preference is.
Right.
People on both sides of the aisle, I think, recognize that Roe v. Wade is just bad law. And the only way I can see it really being upheld is on this doctrine of stare decisis, which basically says that it was already declared once, and so we're going to, even though it's
Basically
maybe
precedent.
Exactly,
Yeah.
makes it precedent. So, but we have enough judges on the court that believe in these principles of textualism and originalism. And so if you're a textualist or an originalist, you would see that the only real decision here is to overturn this bad law. So, I mean, I don't see how we come back from that, at least from a legal perspective, but we'll always have the cultural battle to be fought. So it would be disheartening, certainly, but the best way to, I think, to take on this issue as Catholics, as God-fearing people, is to always be trying to influence the culture.
Right. I agree. I feel like if Roe v. Wade were to come to the Supreme Court now, with everything we know scientifically, I don't think you would have had the same result.
Back in 1973,
Right.
you mean? Oh, no, certainly not. And they even sort of talk a little bit in that majority opinion in Roe v. Wade about how, well, we can't really talk about when life begins. We don't know. But the medical advances that have been made since 73, I mean, no serious person makes the argument anymore that abortion should be legal because we don't know when life begins. Now the
Or
argument
if it's
is
a baby somehow.
Exactly. The argument has shifted now to, weighing the two lives or personhood.
Right.
So that's something that is huge in our favor.
Right. So this is a different challenge than we've seen, even in the one in Texas. The one in Texas is really interesting, what's happening there. And I basically, the way I understand it, please correct me if I'm wrong. The way I understand it is, if a doctor performs an abortion after a heartbeat is detected, then a private citizen can sue them because it's basically against the law. But the mechanism to challenge it is in the lawsuit that someone would have to bring. Is that
That's correct.
right?
Yeah, that's why. It's a difficult law to parse through, but essentially, what's and I think a lot of people are misunderstanding the quote unquote victory that we had at the Supreme Court with that Texas law.
Right.
But really, it comes down to standing. The people who sued Texas under this law were suing the wrong party because the elected officials, those who enacted the law, they're not the ones. I mean, they can't be a party to this. It's your average private citizen.
Right. So it's going to end up going through the courts, may get to the Supreme Court again, and who knows what will happen there.
That's
I
right,
guess.
yeah. I mean, imagine at that point, depending on how they vote on this Dobbs case, it might be a moot point.
Yeah. So the law in Mississippi, is it you can't have abortion at all? Is it only before a heartbeat is detected?
I'm not super familiar with the law, but I believe it's after 12 weeks.
Okay.
Which one of the criticisms levied against it is that, well, you can't even really tell you're pregnant until about that time.
Right.
But I think that was the point.
Yes, it is the point,
yes.
for sure. We want that to be the point.
Exactly.
Okay. And you think that this has a good chance?
I do. I mean, I'm going off of what we know about the justices that have been appointed under the last presidency. They are people who are drawn from the Federalist Society, those who believe in principles of textualism and originalism. And I think, barring political pressure or some misguided reliance on stare decisis, they would have to, I think, come to this conclusion that this decision, Roe v. Wade, has no basis in the Constitution whatsoever.
Yeah, it seems that we have 5 good justices we can probably, hopefully, count on there.
Maybe
6. Yes, maybe 6, but 5 probably for sure.
Yeah, that's my thinking on it, at least. But you never can tell. You can only just hope and pray and trust.
That's very, very true. Anything else we should know about this case? Did we hit it all?
I know it's, the oral arguments I know are starting early December. I can't remember exactly when, but, and likely, I mean, the Roe v. Wade was decided in January of 1973. It would almost be providential for them to overturn it in January 2022, but we likely wouldn't expect a decision on this until June. That would be really fast. It would be fast, and most of the controversial decisions tend to come at the end of June.
Yeah, they take their time.
They do.
You did, in case anybody wants to learn a little bit more about this, Nick did write our guest column for the October Bishop's Bulletin, which will be coming out, actually should be out about the time this airs, or you should be getting it in your mail shortly. So take a look at that. That'll give you a little bit more detail on what we're talking about here. So, okay. If you just joined us, I'm talking to Nick Michels. He is a Catholic attorney here in Sioux Falls, the Deputy State's Attorney for Minnehaha County. So the other thing we want to talk a little bit about is you and some other attorneys around the state have created a St. Thomas More Society in South Dakota. And okay, just tell me what this is, because this is something that's kind of around the country, but we didn't have one in South Dakota yet, right?
That's right. Yeah, there are a lot of local Catholic attorney guilds across the country. There's even a national group now that's trying to get them all under one umbrella called the Catholic Bar Association.
Okay. I think I've heard of them before. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're that was the original impetus, is thinking we'd like to be part of that, but we don't even have anything local yet.
Right.
So I've been talking with several other Catholic attorneys on both sides of the river, really, and there's a lot of interest for that, and it's so far, growing to fruition. We'll see what happens. But we entrust it, of course, all to the Lord's will. Right.
Why does it matter if Catholic lawyers have a group or something for support? Yeah.
Well, there's I think several reasons why it matters. One, I mean, I think anyone in any profession, if you're trying to be a devout Catholic, and you're a lady, so you're living in the world, you're wanting support. How do you navigate that water? How do you balance being a good Catholic with being a good citizen, or being a good whatever you are, whether it's an attorney, a doctor, even a garbage man,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we want to be able to support one another in carrying out our careers, but also we want to be a source of a source for the laity, really.
Okay.
That people out there need an attorney for a whole host of reasons. And whether we deserve it or not, lawyers have a reputation.
What? I don't know what you're talking about.
And so we want to be able to put ourselves forward and have Catholic laity be able to say, I need an attorney, but I want someone who I know is going to, who has the same moral compass as I do, the same values as I do. And so we want them to be able to get in touch with our group and be able to find an attorney like that.
Yeah. So that's really what you guys have to offer for the laity is, like you said, someone who's Catholic who can help you in a time when you probably really are unsure what to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
On an individual level, but even on a bigger level. Our hope is that, as bigger issues become something in the state or even across the country, that those of us who are schooled in the law can give a demonstration, or be able to talk to people about, how we ought to look at this from a Catholic perspective.
Right. Why St. Thomas More?
He is a patron saint of lawyers, jurists, judges.
Was he a lawyer himself?
He was, yeah. He became Lord Chancellor of England, too.
That's right.
If anyone wants to know more about him, I would definitely recommend watching the movie A Man for All Seasons.
Okay.
One of my favorite movies.
Sure.
He's just a reminder of the fact that we have to always be putting God's law above man's law.
Right. And he was martyred, is that right?
He was, by King Henry VIII.
Yep. That's what I thought. Over a law issue.
Well, yeah. Or an annulment issue. Yeah, really.
Right. Yeah. So that's good. Are there other saints that you turn to in your work or just in life? I always love to hear who people have as their kind of patron saint themselves?
Well, St. Raymond of Peñafort is another patron of lawyers. I believe he was a canon lawyer, so patron of canon lawyers. Myself, I love St. Claude La Colombière. He was St. Margaret Mary Alaque's spiritual director, who, of course, gave us devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus.
Right.
So Thomas Aquinas as well. I have his whole Summa on my bookshelf.
Okay, have you read it?
No, parts of it, but no, it's not. I'm not much of a page turner when it comes to this stuff.
What?
I know, it's quite
actually,
large.
Yeah, it's actually something I really wanted to read, but yes, it's not small, and just you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do it.
Maybe a life goal to be able to finish it by the end, but no.
There you go. You're young, you got plenty of time, right?
God willing.
All right, so the other thing I wanted to kind of ask you is a lot of times we don't pay that much attention to the news, to what's going on in politics and law. Is it important for Catholics to pay attention to that stuff? And why?
I think so, absolutely. I mean, that was what in a lot of ways, what the Second Vatican Council was all about. Was, I think it's a tendency, not just among Catholics, but I think human nature, to kind of want to surround yourself with like-minded people, to be comfortable. But that's not what we're called to do as Catholics. We're called to preach the gospel in season, out of season, to go out into the world and tell the good news. And we can't do that if we're kind of closed off in our little ghettos.
Right.
So we need to get involved. This country is our country too.
Right.
And we have wonderful opportunities to shed light on the gospel by engaging in what's going on out there in law and politics.
Yeah. So is there a way that you would recommend regular Catholics try to at least understand what's going on out there?
Well, I'd say read the news, but you get lots.
It's so depressing.
You get pulled in so many different ways. No, I think the most important thing you can do is know your faith, because then when something comes up, then that's your starting point. Our faith should be our identity in so many. When it comes to everything. I mean, my being Catholic is first and foremost in everything that I do.
Right.
So when something comes up, we might be able to disagree on the nitty-gritties, the details. For example, immigration. I know that's a hot issue out there. And we can, as Catholics, disagree on the specifics of it. But to know the general principles involved, like the importance of the dignity of the human person, but also the importance of being able for countries to be able to protect their borders. I mean, these are things that we have to be able to weigh with one another. Yeah.
I think that's a really important point that you just made there, because we're so divided right now, and everybody's on one side or the other, and they think that one side can't have any good ideas and the other side can't have any good ideas. But you're right. It's the details can be different. Even if you keep the principle, there are different ways you can handle a certain situation. And one side isn't necessarily more right than the other.
Right.
And that's what I've kind of noticed is everybody is just so sure that their side has all the answers and the other side can't possibly even have the principle because they don't have the same answers.
Exactly.
So,
and it stifles dialogue, really.
Yes, it does.
Search for truth. No one has a monopoly on the truth. I mean, except, of course, God.
Right.
We have a responsibility. Our life is really all about coming to know the truth more fully.
Yes.
So you can't do that if you're just stuck in your ways.
Yes, absolutely. Some of the things that I know I would suggest that I kind of try to do myself is if you listen to some Catholic radio is very helpful. Hopefully you're listening to it now, and that's why you're hearing this.
Show.
But if you listen to some Catholic news or even read it online, Catholic News Agency, Catholic News Service, you get to see like the day's actual news. It's not just all Catholic news or Pope news. It's actually the news and how it intersects with our faith and how we're supposed to deal with it as Catholics. And that, to me, that's just very helpful. And it's kind of changed how I look at news and how I really consume it. Because before it was all just, hey, just this one side. But I've felt like, I don't know if you've noticed this or if you feel like this, but I feel like in my experience, the Catholic News Services Agency seems to be a little less biased as far as any kind of picking a side. And they're more concerned about how does this thing that's happening, have anything to do with your faith, and how do you deal with it?
Exactly. And I think that should always be the first question in our minds. You know,
Yeah.
we're not devoted to one party or the other. We're not devoted to one political narrative or the other. We're devoted to Christ.
Right. And that's super important.
It is.
So, anything else we missed or should know?
I don't know about miss, but I would like to invite everyone out there if they're available. You know, the St. Thomas More Society here. We're beginning a novena, the first Friday novena to the Sacred Heart, beginning this Friday, first Friday of October. If we pray the first Friday, every Friday for the next 9 months, it ends in June, which is the month of the Sacred Heart.
Yep.
Coincidentally enough, our Supreme Court's term begins in October and typically ends in June.
Right.
So we're going to be using the opportunity this year for the first Friday novena to pray for our Supreme Court, to pray for our country, and to pray for the end of abortion and in our, not just our country, but in the world.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. What is the website they can find the St. Thomas More Society?
We're still a bit of a work in progress.
Yeah, it's not quite up yet. Is that right?
Yeah, we have.
Do you want to not give it out yet?
I can certainly give it out. We have some of our attorneys listed.
Okay.
It's stmssd.com.
So like St. Thomas More Society, South Dakota. Okay.
Yes, and be patient. I would ask your listeners. We are still getting up and running, but the hope is that it'll very shortly be reach a point where if you need a Catholic attorney, you can just Google Catholic attorney South Dakota. There we are.
Would come up. That would be great.
Yes.
That would be great. Thanks so much for being with us today, Nick. It was really good to talk with you and great information. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. God bless you.
All right. If you haven't found us on social media or YouTube especially yet, you can watch these programs, Catholic Views, Ignition, and others on our channel at YouTube at SF Diocese. You can always find us at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. That is it for us today. Hope you'll join us again next week for more Catholic Views.